You can stand in front of a whole table of strawberries, bright red from one end to the other, and still come home with berries that taste like cold water and disappointment. Most people have done it. They reach for the biggest box, or the deepest red fruit, or the berries stacked on top where the light hits them best, and they assume they have made a good choice. Then supper comes, the berries get rinsed, one gets bitten into, and the promise falls flat. It looks right, but it does not eat right. That is the mistake. People shop strawberries with their eyes alone, and strawberries are one of the worst fruits to buy that way. If you know how to read them properly, you can start spotting sweetness before the first bite. Not perfectly every time, because nature still gets a vote, but often enough that your odds change in a real way. You stop buying pretty berries and start buying good berries. The strange part is, this is not complicated knowledge. It is the kind of thing people used to learn by paying attention, standing at a market, picking for jam, tasting through the season, seeing which berries perfumed the kitchen before they even left the basket, and which ones stayed handsome but empty. Sweet strawberries announce themselves in more than one way, and once you learn the signs, the whole produce section changes. You quit being impressed so easily. You slow down just enough to notice what actually matters, and that little shift saves you again and again. The first thing to understand is that color is only part of the story. People are trained to hunt for the reddest berry in the box, as if dark red automatically means full sweetness. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it means the berry is ripe. But ripe and delicious are not always the same thing, especially when strawberries have been picked, packed, cooled, shipped, stacked, misted, handled, and displayed long before they ever land in your hand. A berry can be thoroughly red and still taste flat. It can also be a lighter red and taste far better than the darker one beside it. That surprises people, because modern shopping trains us to look for one easy visual shortcut. Red equals good. Bigger equals better. Shine equals freshness. But strawberries do not follow those neat little rules. They need to be judged like a living crop, not like a painted ornament. So if color is not enough, what should you trust first? Start with smell. This is the sign people ignore because it feels almost too simple. But fragrance tells you more about sweetness than a quick glance ever will. A truly good strawberry has a warm, rich scent even when it is cold. Not a sour smell, not a sharp fermented smell. Not no smell at all. A real strawberry smell. Sweet, floral, a little earthy, almost like summer rising up out of the box. If you lift the container and there is hardly any scent, that is a warning. The berries may still look fine. They may photograph well, but lack of smell often means lack of flavor. The aromatic compounds that make strawberries smell like strawberries are tied closely to the eating experience people are actually after. When those compounds are weak, the fruit often tastes weak too. Now, this does not mean you need to stand there with your nose buried in every carton like a hound dog in church, but if the store allows it, bring the box close and give it an honest smell. If you are at a farm stand or market where berries are loose, even better. Good berries usually tell on themselves. Sometimes you catch that scent before you are even fully beside the table. Those are the berries worth paying attention to. After smell, look at the caps. The green leafy tops tell a quiet story. Fresh caps should look alive, not tired. Bright green, flexible, not brown and shriveled. When the caps look dry, crisp, or dull, the berries have likely been sitting too long. They may still be edible, but that peak sweetness and juiciness people want has already started drifting away. This matters because strawberries do not improve after picking. A banana can soften, a pear can mellow. A tomato might deepen on the counter if it was close. Strawberries do not really work like that. Once they are picked, what you bought is mostly what you get. They can soften further. They can spoil further. But a berry that was harvested before full flavor and aroma developed is not going to become a magical dessert in your fruit bowl. That is why freshness matters so much. You are not just checking whether it will last. You are checking whether the berry still has its best self in it. Then look at the surface of the fruit, but not in the way most people do. Instead of asking, is this red enough? Ask, does this berry look alive and full, or dull and tired? Good strawberries often have a soft, natural sheen, not a hard, waxy shine, and the skin looks gently stretched with juice. The seeds sit in the flesh without the fruit looking leathery around them. If the berries look dry, rough, or a little deflated, sweetness may not be your biggest problem. Texture will be too. And texture matters more than people think. A sweet berry that is mealy or hollow feeling still disappoints. A juicy berry carries the sweetness differently. It fills the mouth. It tastes generous. That is what people really mean when they say a strawberry was good. They are talking about flavor and texture meeting at the same time. Now let us deal with size, because this is where a lot of shoppers get fooled. Bigger is not always better. In fact, some of the largest strawberries in the display are often the most watery. They can be impressive to look at, easy to notice, and good for showing off. But size alone can mean diluted flavor. Not always. There are excellent large berries out there, but if all you chase is bigness, you will regularly come home with fruit that has more volume than character. Small to medium berries, especially in season, often concentrate flavor better. They can be sweeter, more fragrant, and more balanced. That old basket of slightly uneven, modest-sized berries from a local grower will often beat the giant, flawless supermarket berry without even trying. This is one of those places where people have to break a modern habit. We are taught to equate oversized produce with value. More inches, more weight, more product. But a strawberry is not a sack of nails. You are not buying mass. You are buying eating quality. And eating quality does not always shout. Sometimes it sits there in a smaller berry, with a strong smell, and a deep true color, and makes the giant berry beside it seem foolish. Another sign worth learning is uniformity. And not because perfect uniformity is good, sometimes it is the opposite. When every berry in a carton looks strangely identical, the whole thing can feel more like packaging than harvest. Real strawberries have natural variation, slight changes in shape, some rounder, some longer, some with shoulders, some more tapered. That does not mean you want ugly, damaged fruit. It means a little natural difference is normal. If the berries look too perfect, too hard, too standard, and have no scent, that can be a clue that they were bred and picked for travel and shelf life more than for flavor. There is a difference between a berry that can survive a truck ride and a berry that makes you close your eyes when you bite it. And if you have ever had a backyard berry, still warm from the sun, you already know the difference is not small. Now turn the carton over. Most people never do, and they should. The bottom tells the truth, the top likes to hide. You want to check for crushed fruit, juice stains, mold, and moisture buildup. A single spoiled berry can move fast through a container, especially once it has been trapped under plastic. If the bottom berries are leaking, mushy, or wearing little patches of white fuzz, put the carton back. It is not worth hoping the top layer somehow makes up for what is already going wrong underneath. Moisture matters here. A little natural condensation can happen, especially when berries are cold. But too much wetness trapped in the package speeds decay. Wet berries break down faster, they bruise easier, they mold sooner. And even before obvious spoilage, excess moisture can mean the texture is already slipping away. This is where people lose money quietly. They buy a full box, use a handful, and throw out the rest 2 days later, because the fruit collapses before breakfast plans ever happen. If you choose more carefully at the start, you waste less at the finish. Another thing to notice is whether the berries have pale or white shoulders near the top, right below the cap. A little lighter coloring can be normal in some varieties, so this is not a rigid law. But if a berry has a broad pale area and weak smell, that often points to underripeness or incomplete flavor development. Since strawberries do not continue ripening the way many people assume, those pale-shouldered berries often stay disappointing. But here is the important part. Do not turn one sign into a superstition. This is where people go wrong once they learn a few tips. They start acting like one clue decides everything. No, you are reading a pattern. That is how experienced growers, cooks, and market shoppers make better choices. They stack signals. Smell, cap freshness, surface look, weight, bottom condition, season, source, and variety. No single sign carries the whole burden. Together, they make the picture clearer. And that brings us to weight, which is one of the most useful little tricks if you can compare two cartons that look similar. Pick one up, then another. A box that feels a little heavier for its size often holds juicier fruit, not waterlogged fruit, just fuller fruit. There is a difference between berries that feel substantial and berries that feel puffed up. With practice, your hand learns faster than your head. One carton just feels more promising, denser, better filled, less airy. This will not turn you into a strawberry wizard in one shopping trip, but it is a real test. Pair it with fragrance and freshness, and your odds improve again. Season matters too, more than labels do. A strawberry bought near its natural local season has a better chance of tasting like a strawberry should taste. That does not mean every in-season berry is excellent, or every off-season berry is terrible, but season changes the baseline. When strawberries are grown closer to the conditions they like, harvested at a better moment, and sold without an epic journey, flavor has a fighting chance. Off-season berries often ask you to pay peak prices for a fruit that is performing an imitation of itself. They look the part. They do not always live the part. This is why local berries, when you can get them, so often make people remember what strawberries are supposed to be. They tend to be softer, sometimes less uniform, sometimes less durable, and absolutely more worth eating. They were not designed mainly to travel. They were allowed to become themselves. That is a lesson worth holding on to in more than one part of life. The problem is that many people buy with convenience as the only guide. Fast in, fast out. Grab the neatest package, move on. And I understand that. Most folks are busy, but taking 20 extra seconds with strawberries can mean the difference between fruit you crave and fruit you tolerate. If you shop at farmers markets or roadside stands, you get another advantage. You can ask questions that actually matter. When were these picked? Which variety is sweetest today? Are these better for fresh eating or jam? People who grow good strawberries usually know their crop well, and many will tell you plainly which berries are at their best. That kind of direct, practical knowledge is worth more than any pretty sign hanging over the table. Even in a grocery store, the source line matters if it is there. You may see where the berries came from. You may notice one brand turning over fast while another always seems to linger. Pay attention to that. Stores teach you things if you watch them long enough. The berries that move quickly are often fresher simply because they have not had time to decline on the shelf. And while we are here, let us talk about containers. A shallow carton is usually safer than a deep one. Why? Because strawberries bruise each other. The more layers stacked up, the more pressure falls on the fruit underneath. That lower layer may already be getting sacrificed for the neat red display on top. In a shallower basket, or a well-designed ventilated clamshell, more of the fruit stays intact. You can also learn from the sound a carton makes when you move it gently, not shaking it hard, just handling it normally. If the fruit thuds around too freely, that can suggest firmer, less settled berries, sometimes not in a good way. Good ripe strawberries tend to nestle more softly. Again, not a rule by itself, a pattern. The more signs that line up, the stronger your read becomes. Then there is the question people argue about every year. Should you buy the prettier berries or the uglier local ones? If all you need is shelf life for a few days and the berries are going into a fruit tray where appearance matters most, the tougher, prettier berries may serve a purpose. But if you care about actual flavor, the answer often leans toward the less glamorous box, the one with fragrance, the one that maybe has a few odd shapes, the one that looks like it was grown by weather instead of committee. A lot of the best food does not look industrially perfect. It looks alive. Now here is a mistake almost everybody makes at least once. They find a great-looking carton and assume every berry in it shares the same quality. But strawberries vary even within the same package. Top berries catch the eye. Bottom berries take the pressure. If the package is clear, look through the sides. Look at the corners. See whether one end holds softer, darker fruit while the top layer stays photogenic. This is especially important when buying larger family-size containers. A big tub can be a bargain or a trap. If you cannot inspect enough of the fruit, you are taking on more risk, not less. Sometimes the cheaper price per pound ends up being the most expensive choice if a third of the berries are already halfway to mush. You also want to think about what you are buying them for, because the best strawberry for one job is not always the best for another. If you want a bowl of berries to eat out of hand, sweetness, fragrance, and tenderness matter most. If you are making preserves, a slightly softer berry can still be excellent, maybe even better, because flavor can be strong even when the fruit is not beautiful anymore. For shortcake, you want berries with enough juice and aroma to carry the dish. For dipping in chocolate, firmer berries have a practical edge. Purpose changes preference. That is another old kind of knowledge people lose when food becomes too standardized. We start searching for one best version of everything instead of learning which qualities suit which use. And if you really want to sharpen your judgment, buy strawberries from different places during the same week when the budget allows. Get one box from the grocery store, one from a roadside stand, one from a farmer's market if you have one nearby. Taste them side by side. Notice the smell when you open each package. Notice how the knife cuts through them. Notice what happens to the juice on the cutting board. Notice which bowl empties first without anyone saying a word. That small comparison teaches more than 10 generic shopping tips because it gives your senses something real to measure. Once your mouth knows the difference, your eyes start getting smarter. Variety matters too, though stores do not always tell you which one you are buying. Some strawberry varieties are bred for sweetness, some for firmness, some for shipping, some for size, some for a balance of traits. If a local grower names the variety, remember it when you love it. That one detail can save you time later. You may discover that the berry you keep thinking about every June was not just fresher, it was also a kind that fits your taste. Remember where the best berries came from. Remember what they smelled like. Remember what they looked like when sliced. Remember how long they lasted. That is how judgment gets built. Not from one clever trick, but from attention repeated enough times that it turns into instinct. Now let us clear up another false signal: gloss. Some shoppers are drawn to the shiniest berries because shine suggests freshness in many foods. But with strawberries, too much surface gleam can fool you. Bright lighting, condensation, and smooth skin can make a berry seem more alive than it is. Shine is not flavor. You want life, not polish. In the same way, do not confuse hardness with quality. A berry that feels very firm may travel well, and that has its place. But if it feels almost crisp or reluctant, flavor may be lagging behind durability. The best sweet strawberries usually have a little give, not softness from age, not mush, just a gentle tenderness that suggests the fruit developed fully before it was picked. This is where people benefit from slowing down long enough to distinguish firm from fresh and soft from spoiled. Those are not the same pairs. Fresh fruit can be tender. Tough fruit can be disappointing. Old fruit can still be firm in odd ways. Experience teaches those differences if you let it. If you are shopping for children, guests, or a holiday table, the temptation is to pick the prettiest package and be done with it. But a memorable bowl of strawberries is not memorable because everybody admired it from across the room. It is memorable because somebody bit into one and then immediately reached for another. A good strawberry makes you do that almost before you think. There is also a money-saving rule hidden in all of this. If strawberries are expensive and the ones available do not smell like much, do not force it. Skip them. Wait a week. Buy another fruit. Use frozen berries for baking or sauce. One of the most practical habits you can build is refusing to pay premium money for mediocre produce, just because the store put it where your eyes would land on it. That is not deprivation. The season always moves. Better berries come. And learning to pass on weak ones is just as useful as learning to choose good ones. That may sound small, but it adds up over a year of shopping. Not every glossy display deserves your money. Not every fruit in every month deserves your expectations. The more you accept that, the less often you get fooled by appearance, branding, or impatience. Now, if you grow your own strawberries, even on a little patch by the porch, you get an education no store can provide. You learn how quickly warmth changes sugar. You learn that a berry picked a touch too early never quite catches up. You learn that rain can swell fruit and soften flavor. You learn that the bird-pecked berries are often the ones the birds knew were best first. Gardening has a way of humbling your shopping habits. Once you have tasted a berry 10 minutes off the plant, you stop expecting every shipped berry to match it. But you also become better at spotting which store berries came closest. You are not trying to find the mythic flawless berry every single time. You are trying to raise your batting average. More sweet boxes, fewer disappointing ones, better fruit on the table, less waste in the compost. When you begin choosing produce this way, you stop feeling so dependent on labels and claims. You do not need a package to tell you premium, hand-selected, farm fresh, extra sweet, or any other polished phrase. You can inspect, you can compare, you can smell, you can decide. It belongs in gardens, kitchens, workshops, seed catalogs, and every other place where people are tempted to let marketing replace observation. Because once you understand what you are looking at, things get calmer, simpler. You are harder to fool. And that is a good way to move through the world, whether you are buying strawberries or choosing tomato starts or deciding which apples are worth bringing home for winter pies. So let us pull all this together in plain language. When you want sweet and juicy strawberries, do not let color make the whole decision. Smell first if you can. Look for lively green caps. Favor fruit that looks full and fresh rather than dry and tired. Be cautious with giant berries that offer size without scent. Check the bottom of the carton. Watch for leaks, mold, and crushed fruit. Notice pale shoulders, but read them alongside the other signs. Compare weight, respect the season, prefer sources that turn fruit over quickly, or sell close to harvest. And whenever possible, remember that a berry bred to travel is not always a berry bred to delight. That is paying attention where attention pays. And maybe that is why this matters more than it seems to at first. Choosing a strawberry is a small act, but it sits inside a larger habit. The habit of noticing, the habit of testing what is in front of you, instead of accepting the first shiny promise. The habit of trusting your senses enough to sharpen them. People used to carry more of that kind of knowledge without thinking of it as knowledge. It was just part of keeping house well, shopping carefully, feeding a family, stretching money, enjoying the season while it was here. Somewhere along the way, many folks traded that sort of judgment for convenience and branding and speed. But it comes back quickly. A few careful choices, a few honest comparisons, and you start seeing better. Then it becomes hard to unsee. You notice which berries smell like summer and which smell like refrigerator. You notice which ones stain the cutting board red and which ones sit there pale inside. You notice that the expensive box is not always the good box. You notice that the best fruit often asks you to be a little less impressed by appearances. And once you know that, you carry it with you. So the next time you are standing there with a carton in each hand, do not rush the decision. Let your nose have a say. Let your eyes look past the top layer. Let your hand judge the weight. Let the season guide you. Then bring home the berries that actually earned it. And I would be curious to know this. When you choose strawberries, what sign do you trust first, now that you have paid closer attention? Smell, size, color, local source, or something you learned from your own family or garden? Because sometimes the best lessons are not in the label at all. They are in what people have noticed for years and passed along one good berry at a time.